Hello, okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. And here is my spoiler-free review of Jurassic World Rebirth, directed by Gareth Edwards. For those of you that are new to the channel, that have just stumbled upon this video, I'm a massive fan of the Jurassic Park franchise. It was the very first film that I watched in the cinema. It was my first cinema experience back in '93, and it gave birth, Jurassic Park, that original movie. It was one of those experiences that just gave birth. It fueled my love for film. And I've always been excited. I've always looked forward to the next Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movie. And, you know, for those of you that have been following me for a while will know that I'm not a fan of the last couple of Jurassic Park or Jurassic World films. I think Dominion was a giant shower of shit.
That is one big pile of shit.
I was massively disappointed with that movie. Though I did like the first Jurassic World, directed by Colin Trevorrow. I think that, for me personally, I absolutely adored that movie because of what they were attempting to achieve there. Sort of with the nostalgia aspect of it. I've got a lot of fondness for that movie. But anyway, I've been really looking forward to Rebirth, mainly because you've got Gareth Edwards directing. Now, I'm a big fan of Gareth Edwards as a director. I think he does a great job. He's very good at sort of creating this sense of scale and scope within his movies. He's very good at putting you, the viewer, sort of there with the characters, witnessing sort of these giant creatures and monsters and just worlds come to life. He's very good at sort of creating this kind of weight within the frame, sort of allowing you to kind of believe that there's this kind of fantastical world existing within the frame in which our characters are within and which we are within. And so yeah, when Gareth Edwards was announced for Rebirth, I was very excited. And so yeah, the plot of Jurassic World Rebirth, it follows a covert expedition to a remote abandoned island where genetically altered dinosaurs were once created in secret. With Earth's climate growing hostile to prehistoric life, a powerful pharmaceutical company sends a diverse team, including a covert ops expert and a paleontologist, to retrieve DNA from 3 massive species believed to hold a cure for heart disease. But the mission spirals into chaos when they encounter terrifying hybrid creatures and a ruthless corporate agenda. So, Jurassic World Rebirth, one of my anticipated movies of the year. What did I think? For me, Jurassic World Rebirth was the first time where I have witnessed dinosaurs or experienced dinosaurs within the frame that felt like they had a weight to them. That the world in which our characters are within has an actual weight to them. Like, it feels authentic. It feels tangible. It's been a long time. Like, and I think when it comes to sort of how the dinosaurs look from a CGI perspective, from how they're brought to life, this is the best they have looked in a long, long time. Like, I am talking the original movie and The Lost World. I mean, yes, there are moments within this movie that perhaps they could have pulled back a little bit on the CGI maybe, but there are some real beautiful moments within this movie in which I believed these creatures were there existing within the frame. Now, that is something that Gareth Edwards just does a great job at doing anyway. And I had no doubt that this is what he was going to achieve here with Rebirth. And he does a beautiful job at just bringing these creatures to life in a way that really did take me back to being a kid again, watching those original movies. This entire film, the entire experience, had this kind of very sort of traditional, it felt like a good old-fashioned adventure fantasy movie with dinosaurs. Like, and you know, there are moments actually within the movie where there'll be a TV in the background and it's playing one of the very old sort of dinosaur movies, like The Lost World, for example. And I really think that Gareth Edwards did a great job at kind of capturing sort of that essence of those older adventure fantasy movies like The Lost World, and a lot of that is then aided by the fact that this film is shot on 35mm. Like, it adds so much more depth and scope to the experience. As a result, you know, I felt like I was there with these characters, sort of experiencing sort of these events unfold, experiencing sort of these creatures for the first time. And all of this, I felt, is also achieved by how Gareth Edwards frames his scenes. And it's a lot of that, you know, does aid in sort of that kind of the immersion and sort of the, you know, allowing us to believe that we have got these characters within this world and these creatures are there within the frame. And there's almost, I think he does a really good job at capturing the essence of those first two movies. There is a Steven Spielberg vibe about how the film is shot and how the story is told. For me personally, this film felt like a true continuation really of The Lost World, because it just has that kind of the same aesthetic, it has the same look to it, it has that kind of the same vibe to it. I think Gareth Edwards does a wonderful job, a beautiful job at kind of really honouring really what Spielberg crafted with Jurassic Park and The Lost World. I just love that this film had that kind of sort of classic old-fashioned adventure vibe about it. It just took me back to watching certain movies as a child, and he just creates this as a result of all of these kind of, just from the way in which he shoots this movie and how he sort of brings everything to life. You know, there's this kind of the mystical aspect of these creatures, that kind of the awe and wonder of seeing these creatures again on the screen. He does a good job, an effective job at bringing that magic back. And a lot of that is down to just how the movie is shot, how these moments with these dinosaurs are framed. Like, I can imagine watching this film as a kid and just being in awe, like I was with that original movie. And, you know, for example, there's this one moment with Dr. Henry Loomis, played by Jonathan Bailey. By the way, Jonathan Bailey in this movie is absolutely fantastic. He's a great, he does a great job at bringing this character to life. I really liked him. And he plays a part in this moment. It's quite an emotional moment. And it's with him sort of really getting up close to one of these creatures in which they've got to extract the blood. It's a Titanosaurus. I think that's how you pronounce it. And in the trailers, this scene, the glimpse that we got of the scene, I wasn't particularly sort of fussed on, because the CGI at the time in the trailers didn't really look that great. But watching this moment play out with these characters like Dr. Henry, and sort of just seeing how that scene plays out and how the scene is framed, it was emotional. Like, it touched me. And it did. It took me back to watching that first movie for the first time. It's an absolute magical moment. And it's moments like this that I've been missing from these movies for an awful long time, since The Lost World, really. And I just love that they kind of hone in on sort of the horror aspect of this story. Like, there's a lot more, you know, there's much more of a horror element, just like with The Lost World, really, and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. You know, they are aspects that I really like about these stories. And, you know, it's like Jurassic Park had horror elements to it. Like, that movie scared the fucking life out of me as a kid, especially that opening scene. That is something that they kind of really sort of bring to life here within this movie, is the horror of being, you know, sort of within this world with these dinosaurs. Like, yes, it's magical and it's just amazing to see these creatures come to life, but at the same time it's also terrifying. And I think that is also something that Gareth Edwards does a very good job at doing, again, just with how he frames these scenes. Like, there's a fantastic moment in the third act with the D-Rex, and just how that entire scene plays out with sort of the just the how the sort of that scene is kind of brought to life. Like, there's CGI, there's a lot of CGI, but it's also sort of kind of disguised, you could say, with sort of kind of environmental effects. Whereas, like, you know, the first movie had an awful lot of rain. Like, here you've got an awful lot of fog and mist. And just that kind of mixed with how the camera is used. It's in a way adding to sort of the authenticity and the sort of that believability that this creature is there, and sort of intensifying the horror, you could say. Like, there are moments in this film where I think might be just a little bit too intense for a younger audience. And then you have all of that, so you kind of have your environmental, you know, sort of like the fog and the mist and just how the camera is used. And then you've got a good mix of practical effects, and I think from what I read, they had to rely a little bit more on CGI with this movie due to time constraints. I'm not sure how true that is, but for me personally, watching this movie, I just felt like there was a good blend. And I think part of that, I think the reason why I felt like that was just, again, how the camera was used and sort of how this movie looked from a cinematography perspective, and just how everything was sort of brought to life within the frame. And I think Gareth Edwards really kind of, and with the writing as well, I mean, with David Koepp returns here, and I just think it kind of felt like they really wanted to bring this back to basics. It felt very kind of back to basics, and that is an aspect that I really liked about this movie. It has a very straightforward, basic story. It sets up his characters in the first 20 minutes. What I will say is that first 20 minutes is quite clunky. It does allow me to somewhat sort of get behind these new bunch of characters, but at the same time, the way that first 20 minutes sort of just came together, it was a little bit clunky. But once it gets going, once we're on the island, it flies, and it's a good old-fashioned, it is, for me personally, it was good old-fashioned fun. And it took me back to a certain era of movie watching while I was a kid growing up, and I had a good time with this. But there are issues with this movie. I did have issues with this movie, even though I had a fun time, and that there was a lot that I liked about what Gareth Edwards was attempting here. You know, the story in many ways felt like a Zelda adventure, where you've got to extract blood from a sea creature, or sea dinosaur, a land dinosaur, and an air dinosaur. Do you know what I mean? An airborne dinosaur. And so it kind of had that kind of very sort of basic, straightforward plot to it, but it kind of all aided sort of into that kind of the sort of that kind of fun, good old-fashioned fun adventure vibe that I felt the movie had. And I like that. And sometimes that's all you need with these movies. You know, the fact that they've sort of re-injected that kind of the mystical aspect and sort of the magical aspect of these creatures being brought back to life, you know, is great, because it has been missing from these movies. With all that being said, though, like, I've dished a lot of praise on this movie, which I feel like, you know, I felt like it's earned. You know, this movie is nowhere near as bad as what some people are making it out to be. This was a movie with issues. It wasn't perfect. Yes, it's good old-fashioned adventure fun. You know, I liked the film. I didn't love it, though. The biggest issue I had with this movie, other than, like, the first 20 minutes is quite clunky in its setup, even though at the same time I think the setup does a good job at sort of kind of introducing you to these new characters. They are characters that I liked, and they've all got their kind of different personalities, they've all got their different backgrounds, and, you know, there is some depth injected into these characters. The problem is, you have that attempt at setting up these characters for us to sort of get behind, which I think it does an effective job at, even though that first 20 minutes is quite clunky. Once the film gets going and we're on the island, that kind of the characters' journeys, these sort of individual journeys with what they are going through internally, emotionally, and sort of what it is, you know, their motivations and all of that kind of gets lost. And so for me, even though there are some arcs, character arcs, that sort of have some sort of a conclusion to them, overall, like, there are some major character kind of stories or journeys that for me didn't really end up having a satisfying conclusion to their arc, to their character arc within this movie. Like, there's an attempt at it, especially within the third act, but it kind of just loses focus on that character aspect of its story. And so it's disappointing because I felt like it's the character aspect that if that worked, this movie could have been something truly special and an experience that had a big heart within it, you know, an emotional experience, even though there's a moment here and there that's quite tender, that does, you know, pull on the heartstrings. Overall, as an experience, it kind of just falls apart when it comes to sort of its characters and their stories within this story. Another issue I had, and it's, again, this is kind of like a minor issue now, but we get some really great moments with these dinosaurs and with our characters. You know, you got the raft scene with the T-Rex. It's a great moment. There's some really great moments within that scene that I really dug, especially with the child underneath the dinghy, and you've got the teeth for the T-Rex coming through it. There's like little moments like that kind of really made me smile, and they were a lot of fun. And again, you know, Gareth Edwards does a great job at framing these moments, framing these scenes. But there's an issue. I kind of had a little bit of an issue with how sort of these moments, these action set pieces would sort of conclude, how they would kind of play out. Like, for example, Gareth Edwards is fantastic at sort of immersing you into this world and sort of allowing us to kind of believe that these creatures actually exist within the frame. He does a wonderful job of that, and there's this one moment where, you know, I felt like he really excels, which is a moment with Dr. Henry Loomis and with a Titanosaurus. And, you know, it's a magical moment. But then, like every other moment in this movie, it kind of just sort of builds to nothing. There isn't really much of a dynamic or energy to a moment. And a lot of that, I felt, was just how it kind of plays into the positives I had with Gareth Edwards as a director and how he immerses us into this world. Because at the same time then, that kind of creates a clunkiness to an action scene. Because an action scene needs to have an energy behind it. It needs to have a flow and it needs to have a momentum. And that never really happens. And as a result, the action set pieces, even though I had fun with them, there was a clunkiness to how they would sort of all kind of play out and build. And they would just sort of build to what I felt was quite a flat conclusion. And that is why, even though I like this movie more, I feel, than a lot of people, I also understand a lot of the negative criticism as well. You know, there is I suppose, a flatness to the experience that actually reminded me a little bit of Jurassic Park 3. Though, for me personally, right now, I think this is a better movie than Jurassic Park 3. But there is a somewhat flatness to it, and I just think a lot of that is to how you get these great moments, these great action set pieces that are fun, but kind of just build to nothing. And that is a lot down, I think for me personally, that was down to sort of how these moments were constructed, how they flowed. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. If I'm wrong, you know, or if you agree with me, let me know in the comments below. But that's how I kind of felt. So yeah, you know, in many ways, it does a great job at setting things up, or setting characters up. It does a great job at setting moments up. You know, there are moments that are fun, there are characters that you could get behind, but nothing truly has a satisfying conclusion or a moment that kind of lands a punch, you could say. But there was a lot that I liked about this movie. Like, I came out sort of the screening, I went back to the very first cinema that I ever went to watch that original movie in '93, and I came out and it was like, yeah, I really liked that. I mean, I really liked sort of what Gareth Edwards was attempting, what they did achieve, because I felt like there was a lot that they did achieve. But at the same time, it was like, but I didn't love it. I didn't quite love it. But it's definitely one of the strongest sequels that we've had since The Lost World. You know, I loved the attempt at sort of really going back to basics. Like, we didn't get the same of what we've already had in the previous 3 movies, for example, which was one of the things that I was very afraid of. I hope we weren't going to get, like, there were a couple of things that I did like within sort of the last 3 movies, and they didn't repeat them here, and I really appreciated that. This did, to some degree, feel different. Also, it was very familiar, but then that kind of plays then again into another minor negative I had which is you get moments that kind of are callbacks basically to what we've had in sort of the previous 2 movies. Like the kitchen scene with the velociraptors. A fucking great scene. But there is a moment here that is a callback. It's reflective of that same moment. And yes, you know, it pulls on the nostalgia strings. It made me smile, but at the same time, it's like, do something that's different. Don't sort of, like, I hate it when films, like, especially with one-liners and sort of quotes and all of that, I hate it when they use sort of callbacks or rely too heavily on callbacks. And I wouldn't say this was heavily relying on callbacks, but they are there, and I'm like, okay, yes, you know, you're reminding me of a moment in Jurassic Park, but it sort of takes away then from the identity and sort of that kind of the originality of this sequel, you know, this new story that we are experiencing. So yeah, I think that's enough rambling on from me about Jurassic World Rebirth. This is definitely a film that for me anyway, is not as bad as some people are making it out to be. It's definitely one of the stronger sequels since The Lost World. For some people, that might be, you know, well, that's not easy. You know, that's easy. But, like, I'm a massive fan of the first Jurassic World. Jurassic Park 3 has grown on me over the years. Kind of, like, with its simplistic, kind of straightforward, again, almost like a good old-fashioned adventure vibe to it. I mean, I feel like Gareth Edwards does a better job at that with Rebirth, but you know, it's an experience that was fun. I liked it. It kind of sort of re-injected the magic and that kind of the mystical aspect and sort of that essence of those first 2 movies, of sort of witnessing these creatures come to life. You know, there is a weight there within the frame. I actually now, for the first time in a very long time, believe that these characters are there with these creatures. And even though from like what I've read, there was a lot of CGI used, and there is definitely practical here. I think there's a really good blend of both practical and CGI. But just with the way in which the camera is used and sort of the environments and how it's all brought to life, there is a authenticity there. There is a weight there. There's a scope there that has been missing from these movies. And I appreciated all of that. There was a lot to admire about this movie, and I'm looking forward to going to see it again. Like I said, it's not a movie that I loved. You know, I obviously wanted to love this movie, but there's a lot that I did admire and appreciate about it. But it does have its issues. It does have its problems, but it wasn't enough for me to not have a good, fun time with this film where it did transport me back to a certain era of film, and I was immersed, and I liked the new characters. I was able to get behind these new characters, and I enjoyed what they were attempting or what they were achieving. So, yes, they are my thoughts on Jurassic World Rebirth, and I will be giving Jurassic World Rebirth they are my thoughts on Jurassic World Rebirth. But what did you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be, when it comes to the cinema releases, will be for Superman. I'm really excited for that. It's another one of my anticipated movies of the year. And I know I keep saying this, but there will be a retro review coming very soon, and that will be for Crack in the World. That's also on the way. So yeah, and just another big thank you to everyone that has supported the channel, whether it be liking, commenting, subscribing. It means the world to me. And so yeah, that's it from me for now. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be catching you guys soon.